Okay, I just started recording this session. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. This is the last webinar today for Thursday for the TOPPS session. Today we're talking about peer review in Canvas, and once again we are joined by the fantastic Anita Wolford, who is the Instructional Technology Consultant in Arts and Sciences. And she's got a lot of content to cover with us today, so I'll go ahead and let her get started.
Welcome back, everyone. The first thing I'm going to do so that I don't forget is I'm going to share the link to the Google Doc where you can find all of the information I'm going to cover today. So there it goes. You should find that link in the chat. And now I'm going to take just a second to share my browser. All right. So we should be good to go. And Amy, if you'll just monitor the questions and let me know if someone has a question.
I will do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So you should be seeing my shared browser now with a Canvas course in here. And so we're going to look at how to create peer reviews. So a peer review is exactly what it sounds like. It enables students to provide feedback on another student's work. It allows communication between students, so if you want a way of doing that that's not, for example, a discussion board. And it helps students learn the material because they have to basically, criticize each other. It's almost like that notion of, how do you really know something? You try to teach it back, So you can do several things with peer reviews. The first is you can choose to have the students' names displayed so they can see who they're reviewing and who is reviewing them, or you can have it be anonymous so that they cannot tell. You can also assign students, they can just review one peer or many. You have the choice. And then you can either have Canvas automatically assign the reviews, or you can manually assign them yourselves. So what we're going to look at is how to apply peer review to an assignment paper submission. If you're in Canvas very much, you may notice that you also have the option to apply a peer review to a discussion board, but I don't really recommend that. The few people that we've had try it have had some problems with it. And also, if you think about it, for the most part, in a discussion board, a peer review is really just done in the reply. Students will reply to each other, make comments on what they have said. So I'm not sure how useful peer review on a discussion board is anyway. So we're going to stick with the assignments tool, and the assumption here is going to be that students have submitted a paper. So we're going to jump into how to create a peer review. So I'm in the modules page, and that's where I'm going to add my assignment, but of course you can do the exact same thing directly from the assignments page. But I'm going to go into my module. I've already created a module for peer reviews. So I'm going to go to the plus button, and I'm going to choose, in this case, the default. I'm going to choose to add an assignment. And I have all of these. You can see that I've already created, but I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this TOPPS Peer Review. And then add the item. So now we have this empty item. It's not published. I haven't put anything in there yet. So I'm going to click on this assignment, and then I'm going to adjust the settings. So here, as you can see, there's nothing in there yet. So I'm going to click Edit. And then this is the interface. If you've ever created an assignment, you'll see it. If you were in my last webinar, you'll see here are all those formatting tools that we talked about. So we can make this assignment look a lot fancier, but for the sake of time, we're not going to. So in the box here, this assignment box with the visual editor, this is typically where you put the question they're supposed to be answering or the description of the assignment. So I'm going to say, just description here, blah, blah, blah. Come down here, set the points possible. And then the normal things that you see when you have an assignment. You can put in an assignment group if you weight grades. Display as points, percentage, whatever you want. Submission type. So the assumption here is that this is a paper assignment. Students are going to write a 2-page paper, a reflection, whatever. So we're going to say that the submission type here is online. What are we going to allow? You can do any combination of these, but I'm just going to say file uploads. And then we come down. So we'll talk about group assignments and peer review a little bit later, so I'm not going to check this box. But this is where you have the peer review options right here, require peer reviews. So the first step is to check the box. All right. And then you have a couple of different options here. The first is manually assign peer reviews. If you do that, then basically you're going to make a decision about anonymity, and then you're going to enter due date and move on. Or you can have Canvas automatically assign peer reviews, which is what we're going to look at. We'll look at both, but I'm going to set this one up to have Canvas automatically do it. So I'm going to say, in this case, I'm going to say automatically assign peer reviews. And then you see you get a couple more options. How many reviews do you want each user to have to do? So, of course, minimum 1, but if you have 20 students and you want them each to do 2 reviews, that's totally fine. You can put whatever you want in here. I'm going to keep it at 1. Now, here's a key thing to note, that when you're having the system automatically assign the reviews, peer reviews can't be assigned until after the due date has passed. And the reason why is because the system wants to wait until all of the assignments have been submitted so that it'll have everything it needs to work with. So if it assigns the peer reviews early and some students haven't submitted, then that can create problems. So it requires you to make this due date, this date be the due date or sometime after. So I'm going to go ahead and set a due date for this. And we'll say it's today at 5 p.m. And I'll just make that the same time. Maybe I'll say 5:30. Doesn't matter. And now your second option here is, do you want the peer reviews to appear anonymously? And what this means is that when the students have been assigned who they're supposed to review, they won't know the actual person's name. And then also, when the student goes in to read their feedback, they won't know who reviewed them, so they won't see the name of the person who reviewed them. So the good thing with having these anonymous is you don't have to worry about little grudges developing in the classroom depending on who reviewed who, or someone feeling like they can't be completely honest because their name will be visible. You avoid all of that stuff by making the peer reviews anonymous. But there is an important thing that you lose when you do this that you need to be aware of. So you'll see as we go through this, the interface that students use for completing the peer review is basically the Speedgrader interface. They can't enter an actual grade, but all of the other options for Speedgrader are available. They can fill out a rubric if you have it. They can put in general comments. They can use the annotation tools, the markup tools on the document. But if you have these reviews appear anonymously, the students will lose the ability to mark up the document. So that's very important because the doc viewer that Canvas uses, by default, it has to associate a name with any annotations, with any comments placed directly on the document. So that's something to, they'll still be able to put the generic comments on that right-hand side, but if the ability for the students to actually mark up each other's papers is important, then unfortunately you can't do anonymous right now because it's going to put the name on those comments. So just keep that in mind. So we're not going to say appears anonymously. And then we've got our due date, and then we'll save and publish. Oh, okay, we have a question.
They still have the rubric though, right?
Okay, I was going to mention this when we jumped in, but I'll go ahead now. It's a good time. So the rubric. So with rubrics, if you use rubrics, you have to consider that with the peer reviews, because for Canvas to consider a peer review complete, the minimum requirement is that students have to at least leave one comment. It only takes one comment, and you'll see how Canvas shows you this in a minute. But for Canvas to tell you as the instructor that, and the students, that your review is complete, you have to leave at least one comment. However, if you include a rubric on the assignment, even for your grading purposes, then Canvas will not indicate that the peer review has been completed until the student fills the rubric out for the person they're reviewing. So now they can't enter grades. They can click, the boxes to say how they think they performed, but it's not going to enter a grade, so you don't have to worry about students actually grading each other. But, I've had some instructors who have the rubric attached to an assignment for themselves to fill out, but they don't really want the students to have to do it. Maybe they want the students to have the option to fill out the rubric, but not a requirement. And you can do that, but then you'll just need to know that you'll have to manually check those to see if the student has completed it, because Canvas will not indicate to you that the peer review has been completed until the students fill out a rubric, if a rubric is attached. And again, I'll show you in just a minute when we create this how Canvas notifies you of these things. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? April, do you have another question?
Sorry, I was just chatting away.
Okay.
I forgot to mute my microphone. I apologize. So it sort of answers my question, but I don't use the numbering portion of the rubric. I use the one that allows me to put comments in. So if they would still be able to use that, where they could comment on each individual section, they just would not put in the grade at the end of it.
Right. You know how when you fill out a rubric, you can just manually type in, but you can click the boxes to speed things up. Students have that ability, but it's not going to apply any points to it. It's just going to apply the feedback.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So at this point, I'll mention before we save this and then look at it and see what it actually looks like, I want to go back up here, because remember I mentioned you have this option for a group assignment. So I've had people ask about this, and this is a little bit tricky. So the way that a group assignment works, if you've never used one, it's basically its own whole separate workshop. But if you have 4 groups of 4, right, and so they have to submit a group assignment, then even though, say, you have 16 people, you're only going to get 4 assignment submissions, because for a group assignment, one person submits the assignment on behalf of everyone else. So the assumption is that for the 4 people in group 1, one person submits it, and that counts for all 4 of those people. So you will only see 4 submitted assignments with a group assignment. Canvas will still allow you to make this a group assignment and do peer reviews, and it will ask you if you want to allow intra-group peer reviews, which means in essence that students within the group can review each other. So from a certain perspective, they would just be reviewing their own work. So from that perspective, it's not particularly useful, and I have more of this in the handout I gave you. But some people could use this, with the point being a way for students to not critique the assignment itself, but to critique the work their peers did on it. So if they wanted the students to be able to go in there and start marking up this document or commenting and say, I did the work here, here, and here, but this person didn't do this, or they did this part here, which I know is not correct, but it's their work, so I didn't change. That kind of thing. If you want it to be that kind of peer evaluation, more like a peer evaluation than a peer review, you could allow intra-group reviews. But what you would want to do is then you would want to come down here and say manually assign the peer reviews, because even though you're allowing intra-group peer reviews, you're not necessarily limiting it to that. So you'd want to make sure that all the students were assigned to their fellow group members. So you would just want to have to do the reviews manually that way. It's a little complicated, especially if you've never done group assignments before. So if you have any questions about that, even if it's simple, I can go ahead and answer it, or we could stay after and talk. But generally, I don't do it. So we're going to go ahead and leave group assignment off. So we said automatically assign peer reviews 1 per user, assign after this time. Not anonymous. We've got the due date in, and I'm just going to save and publish. Now, initially, when you save and publish, you're not going to see anything, because nobody, of course, has submitted yet, and the peer review deadline has not passed. But you can see here is the interface. Here's where you can add your rubric if you want. But you have this extra button over here now called peer reviews. You're not going to see anything active happening in there right now, because, again, nothing has been assigned. If you click in there, this is what it looks like. So I have Sam, Robin, and Amanda have been enrolled in this course, so that you can sort of see what it looks like. But again, this one, obviously no one has submitted yet. So you see, no one has anything assigned, right? But if you were going to manually, if you chose the option to manually assign the peer reviews, this is what you would do. You would come in here and you would click this and choose the student that you wanted Sam to have to review, and then you would say add. And that would put Rob under Sam, so Sam would be reviewing Rob's work. So does that, and when you have the option too to come in here and automatically do it after the fact as well. So does that make sense so far? Okay, I'm going to jump into one where I've had these guys do some test submissions so that I can show you what it looks like. So complete example, we jump in here. So I made this one earlier and I had them, do some submissions so I could show you what it looked like. So if you look over here now, you see peer reviews, and you can see that there have been 3 submissions, one of which have been graded. So now we're going to jump into peer reviews and you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to click in there. All right, and whoops. Okay, here we go. Yes, Sam didn't submit one. So Rob was assigned Amanda, and you see right here this exclamation point. That means that Rob has not done his evaluation yet. So he has not submitted a review of her. But if there were a rubric attached to this assignment, you would want to remember that if he commented on her work that he did not fill out the rubric, you would still have this exclamation point. So you could just click in here and manually check it. Now, there was not a rubric on this one, so he just didn't do it. That's okay. But so what you can do, you have a couple of options. So he hasn't done this. So the little sort of bell icon here, if you click this, it's going to send him a reminder notification that his peer review is still due, but he hasn't submitted it yet. If anything happened, maybe he was assigned Amanda and something happened, and you wanted to take her off, you can click the trash can icon and remove Amanda from being his peer review. And then you could just click down here and give him another submission. So that's how that works. Now, Amanda did complete her review, and so that's why you see this checkbox. So she went in there and she completed it. You could still, there's no reminder or notification because she did the assignment, but if for any reason there was some kind of issue, you can still remove this. Even though she's completed it, you could remove it and then just assign her someone else. But so what does it look like? So she submitted this, so we'll click in here, and so you can see how this is going to look from your instructor's standpoint. So we're going to click on Rob. And so this is sort of your initial view. This is the link directly to what he submitted. You can see that she came over here and added an overall general comment. So she typed in here and hit save. So her comment was just overall great job. That's what she put over here. And then she hit save. And you as the instructor still have the ability to do additional markup beyond what the student did. So you're not, by signing a peer review, you're not losing your ability to add comments, to mark up the document, etc. But you can see that her comment shows up here. Now, she did mark up this document. So what you want to do is click this View Feedback. Now, I'll mention this now so I don't forget, but the View Feedback button is important because this is how students see what they got. And students get this View Feedback button for all of their assignments that have markup on them. So independent of peer review, if you have students submit papers and you've marked it up, this is where they see the markup comments, is this View Feedback. And I hear from instructors pretty often that students don't know they're supposed to click this View Feedback button. And so in the document I shared, I have a link in there that you can send directly to your students to tell them this is where you go view your feedback. Whether it's peer review or not, it just tells them where to find this View Feedback button so you can use that. But so we're going to click on View Feedback, and so we'll take it just a second here. But you can, it's just this one page, but you can see where Amanda marked it up right here. She said good title, and that's her direct markup on the document. This is her overall comment, but notice she cannot enter a grade here. And if a rubric were attached, she would be able to click the boxes, with the criteria, but it would not apply any points associated with those. The instructor would go back and do that. The 98 up here, that's the grade that I entered as instructor. So that is what it looks like for the instructor view and basically for the student view as well. They'll go in there and see the same things. They get there by clicking on their assignment submission. Students will also, and I cover this in more detail in the document, but students also get alerts and notifications to let them know that they have a peer review assignment due. So, so if they're checking their email, if they're looking in the Canvas course, they'll know that they have an assignment. And again, the links, I'll give you links directly in the document that you can send to them to tell them, one, how to submit their peer review if they're not sure where to find it, and also then how to view their own feedback if they're not sure where to see that as well. And so then the last thing I want to mention is just the grading. And this is one thing that I don't love about peer review, and a lot of people don't. And that is just to keep in mind that a lot of people think of peer review as two separate assignments because you submit your initial document. So if I'm a student, I submit my paper, and so that's one assignment. And then you would think that, okay, if then I'm assigned to review Rob, that's a second assignment. So you think I get graded for my submission, and then I get a separate grade for how I evaluated Rob. But that is not the way that Canvas sees it. When you create these peer review assignments, you create the assignment, you're asked to enter 1 point value, which you saw that I did. I entered 100 points, and then you submit, and that's it. So Canvas does not, by default, give you any way to differentiate how you grade the initial submission versus the peer review. So really there are two ways you can do it. You can, when you're going in to enter the grades, you can just enter one grade for the one assignment, and then in a comment, a note to the student, tell them, you know, your final grade was a 98. You got 48 points for your assignment submission, and then 50 of the points are for the peer review that you completed. So you can just incorporate it all into the one grade and just tell the students the points that
Can everyone hear?
No, I lost the audio.
I did too.
Yep, me too.
Can anybody hear her?
No one can hear her. Hold on 1 second. Let me just check on Anita. 1 second.
Okay.
This has happened to me before. It's usually something on my end, so just give her a moment, and I'm sure she's going to answer some questions that you have. While we're waiting for her to come back in, has anyone tried to use this tool before in Canvas?
I have not yet, so that's why I was curious to learn more about it.
I used peer reviews, but I've never actually used the tool because I wasn't sure what it looked like on the student perspective, but I will definitely be using it in the fall.
Okay. I think myself too. She's going to leave and come back. That's what I was going to suggest. So she can answer your questions. Anybody else think about using the peer review tool this fall?
I'm not sure, I guess because I'm looking more for how to do a group review, like for group work versus individual papers. So I'm not really sure how, I definitely wanted, we touched on a lot of great group ideas with Jane Harris in that in yesterday's workshop, and I'm definitely going to incorporate that, but I'm not sure if the peer review for papers is what I'm heading towards, because I need more group assessment versus individual peer reviews. So.
But one of the things I'm thinking about for peer review is like formative. So like as they're going, like a benchmark, having them give feedback at that point with the peer review. So, but doing something different at the end, like more summative with the group. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how I might incorporate it into my class where the online class where they have to all write a paper about a different fiber. But right now I have that as my final assignment of the semester. I've got to figure out how to maybe rethink that because it might come in handy, you know, but I'm not sure if that's the right paper.
I'm going to jump in real quick. Am I back? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. we were chatting about peer reviews, so we want you to complete your thought, though. I'm going to hand the presenter back to you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm sharing my browser again. It'll take just a second to come up. We should be there. But I was just wrapping up to tell you the issue with grading. I'm not sure exactly where you lost me. I don't want to repeat too much, but did you hear the bit about where it does not give you it doesn't give you the option to enter two separate grades?
Yes, we heard all that. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so wouldn't you just set up a different assignment for the paper and just the grade is just for the review?
Yes, that was the second option I was going to give you when I lost audio. So the other option is it's just that. You can enter the grade for the assignment submission on the main, peer review assignment that you created, and then you can create a separate assignment that's you can call either no submission or on paper, and then put the actual peer review grade in that column, and that can be a way to accomplish it. But it's just, it's not very streamlined, because to do this effectively, you're probably going to be wanting a couple of browsers open or a couple of tabs, because you're going to have to keep track of the review that you're looking at, and so I just wish it were a little more seamless, but you do have those two different options for how you can account for two different point values for the paper submission and then the peer review. And that was really, and then I was done. So do you have any questions?
We were chatting a bit while you were logging off and back on about how we're thinking about using it. So if anybody wants to speak up about what they're thinking about, that'd be great.
I don't mind sharing. My students have to do speeches, and in addition to the presentation, they have to turn in outlines, and I have them turn in an initial outline and then a final outline. And I am going to use this to have them give each other feedback on their initial outlines to improve those final outlines.
I have a question, Anita. What kind of assignment do you think this is best suited for?
Well, by far, so when you create the peer review assignment, as you saw, you are creating just a general Canvas assignment submission. So you have multiple options on there. So students could, include, for example, a URL or some other kind of multimedia, something like that. But by far, it's the most common use is for some kind of paper submission. Now that can be many different things. So it can just truly be a traditional paper that that gets assigned so frequently, and then the students evaluate each other. Or you can have you could break the paper up, for example, like an outline, or your opening paragraph, or even just a thesis statement, have students give each other feedback. If you're having, for example, a final project, so not a paper, but it's going to be a project, but you want students to give each other feedback on their proposals, then you could do the proposal as a peer review assignment. If students, so really the most common use is some form of a written assignment, but the written assignment can really be anything. Students could have to interview someone and submit that, and then they could review each other on that. And again, it doesn't have to be a document, but that's most often the case, is it's something that's written up. So, to some extent it might vary, based on field, but you could submit presentations as well. You know, students can upload PowerPoints, things like that. So there are a lot of different ways to use it. But again, I definitely would not recommend using it in the discussion board format. You'll probably encounter problems. And like I said again, you know, for the most part, students just reply to each other in a discussion board to give the feedback anyway. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
And if you have questions, you know, so what you could do, like if you want to incorporate a peer review assignment but you're not sure how, what would probably be the most useful is to just sit down with your ITC and look at the content of your course. We can give you a lot more examples and more specific examples when we're looking at your specific course and seeing what you're trying to do in there. So you'll probably find that pretty useful too.
Great, thank you.
Anything else?
Nita, I think I'm going to continue to break your rule and use discussions as part of the as part of the peer review process. I think that I've gotten past the problems that I was having with it, and I'm simultaneously training them to use Google Docs, and so the way I've been doing it is just setting it up as an assignment and or as a discussion board, and when they finish their Google Docs assignment, then they paste the link to that assignment into the discussion board, and that signals that they're ready to be peer reviewed, and that also gives me a cutoff date for everybody. When the discussion board is due and at assignments, and I think for a couple of semesters now this has been working okay.
Okay, that's good to hear because we do, you know, we don't have a lot of people who apply peer review to discussions, but the few that do, we do hear from them periodically with just technical problems that they're having. But Joel does bring up an interesting point that I didn't think to mention, is that just like how you don't by default have two different grading options in the peer review, do note that you also don't have two different due dates officially. So the due date that you set in the actual due date field has got to be for when the paper submission is due, because until that date passes, you can't trigger the assigning of the peer reviews. So there is no separate due date option for when the peer review itself is due. So you'll have to tell students that. And then the way you can lock down peer reviews from being submitted after when you want them to be due is just put an end date for the availability of the assignment. But do keep in mind there is no option in there to just set a second due date that is for the peer review itself. So again, you can work around.
I just have to set up two assignments, one for when the peer review document is ready, and the second one is when the peer review is finished.
Mm-hmm. And if you're at all worried about setting this up correctly, if you do want to enter two separate grades and you're at all concerned about that, just go to your ITC and we can sit down with you and walk you through the setup. We do this all the time, so it's just a quick couple of minutes and you'll be done.
Okay.
Any other questions for Anita? Anita, thank you so much for walking us through this tool, getting us thinking about how to get our students giving each other feedback. Just want to mention really quickly before we leave that we are hosting webinars tomorrow. I'm trying to paste it in there while I talk, and it shows I cannot do both well. So I'm going to post in the chat the link to the webinars tomorrow. We're doing one from 9 to 10. Jane Harris and I are going to kind of summarize the morning meetings that we had this week. So if you missed something this week, you can join us and we can kind of recap. Or if you were there and you're like me, you just want to hear everyone's thoughts and kind of summarize the main things that we learned from Michelle and the student and faculty panels, please join us for that from 9 to 10. And then we have another great one tomorrow from the library as well about Zotero. If you've never used that tool, it's a great tool. So hope to see everyone.